Well, hi there. I'm Dani, spiritualtherapist.com, and today it is February the 1st, 2022, and we're kicking off the beginning of this month with the wonderful Tattooed Spirit, Jeff Burr. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm thrilled to be back. I had such a good time last time. I'm just looking forward to talking what we're going to talk about. I have it all laid out. I don't think we should be short on stuff to chat about today. That's for sure.
Well, I actually think if we were on a desert island, we'd keep talking till nobody came forever, and then maybe someone did. So people like you and me will that, you know, those firing squads in the brain, those neurons, that all that energy. No chance of that. So guys, today we're going to share with you. Really, we're going to start with Jeff's journey. A lot of you asked me questions, emailing. You're really getting interested in tarot. And I do want to put you to his website, which is Tattooed Spirit. He's got this fantastic masterclass for learning the tarot. He's made effort to create a video for every single tarot card and speak about them. It's just magnificent. So anyone that's got an interest, this is a really good person to learn from. Really, really impressed. Had some amazing comments and emails from people on what we did last week. So look at all of that. But I want to talk about your last video that you made, which was time, perception, and tarot. So talk a bit about that, please.
Well, to sum up, and of course, I welcome anyone to jump on over to my little corner of the internet.
Not yet.
Hell of a what's that? No, not you. Don't yet. Yeah. But I had a hell of a good time on my little channel, and that actually that talk that I did explaining tarot, and you don't have to really understand tarot to understand the concept. And this is what prompted this idea to do this video, was the idea that all of the life situations, scenarios, circumstances all happen within time, obviously, because it takes time for that to happen. And we're sort of trapped in this matrix of this third dimension sort of stuff that's going on right now, where we're just enjoying this space and time. But real knowledge, real truth, the real mind of God is actually eternal and outside of time. And the card that freaks most people out, this is really why I wanted to do this video, was this devil card, okay? Because this is the card that tricks you into thinking that these life scenarios and situations that we're living is all that there is, that the wisdom of these other major cards, of which this one is a part, that, you know, the devil wants you to think that those aren't important. He wants to trap you in time, in this ego of the limitation of your body in a particular time in space. But real knowledge, real truth is eternal. The mind of God is eternal, and you're one aspect of it. That's what that full card is all about, that you may have remembered from that last talk that I was here. So that's what that talk was about. It goes into a lot more depth, but the idea to get out of this perception and worry and stress of the third dimension, to get back to true knowledge, eternal truth, that we are indeed outside of time, and just this devil's trying to keep us believing that our egos that are trapped in time are the only thing that matters. And of course, all the imagery of all the cards represent that, which is why tarot is actually, guys, believe it or not, it's incredibly easy to learn and to be proficient at. So if you're curious, check out that last video later after this one, but that's what that video is about. And so happens that it's really, I think, what we're going to be talking about today.
Excellent. I'm hoping that this is going to come out different to what it's looking, because you're like, blah, 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 as in the speeding up, speeding down, a little bit of interference, a little bit of interruption there. So if I can't hear you, I'll just ask you to repeat, but just so you know, it's a little bit like on the dodge.
All right.
So I don't know if you can do anything there, fiddle with the Wi-Fi a little bit, but no, thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much for that, and showing the devil card. And no, for me, like, I've always used like goddess cards and angel cards, and much kind of a higher, lighter vibration. I just decided these are lighter, tarot is heavier, only because I didn't have a very good beginning tarot sessions with a couple of people, and I got so scared, and I saw the tower and the devil, and it was the same person twice that I went to. I mean, I should have learned my lesson. and you got to really feel connection to the person that you want to, you know, spend time with and reading you. And she scared me silly and said, oh, you know, this is going to happen. And then really, really painful things happened for me. Like, you know, how suddenly like hit the wall, 3 things happen in a row sometimes. And so I really, really shied away from it. And it's only really recently that I, you know, I've kind of been like, you know, and then finding you, I'm like, definitely. So, and like I said, I've had emails, people are like, I'm really interested now. And, you know, and I want to get your course, your master course, your master class, it's online. So it's completely brilliant. So one of the other things that we've been discussing in terms of the whole kind of spiritual, you know, spiritual landscape is like each step of your life growing with tarot, and you've played with tarot now for over 20 years. You were supported by books, by reading. And so we're going to share some of the books, because also guys out there are saying, Dani, what book should I read? How can I develop myself? What's going to help me? And so doing this condensed conversation with you and I, Jeff, is really going to add value. We hope you enjoy it, guys. We haven't actually shown each other the books. We just thought it'd be more fun just to bring the books that we love, that we have on us. I'm in a different country. Most of mine are elsewhere, but I've got a handful and Jeff's got some too. So we're going to start with you, Jeff.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying to Dani before we got started, everyone, it was so much fun for me to bring out the books that I still had, because unfortunately I lent some of them out. Other, you know, books I left in other places that, you know, before I moved. I would encourage everyone to do this. Go to find your most influential books and bring them out, because for me, it was an emotional, awesome ride to just kind of remember that time in my life when I first got introduced to this idea. For me, my first set of books was this idea that God wasn't some dude in the sky that was waiting to punish you and was responsible for all the ills of the world. And that was the Conversations with God series. Dani, have you ever seen this?
From
Neil
Donald Walsh. Yeah.
Classic. And this was one of these books for me. It was probably when I first got to Los Angeles in 96, 97. And there was a bookstore down there in West Hollywood called the Bodhi Tree Bookstore. And it was like the mecca of these type of books, which I didn't know existed. I didn't know this type of world existed in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I was brought up. And so I don't know if it was suggested to me, but this book just sort of spoke to me. And it absolutely, I think it's the 101 for sort of spirituality. You know what I mean? The idea to sort of remove this personalization of some dude on a throne, if that works for you, you know, into this more of a force of good. And it's channeled information. That was new to me at the time too. I had no idea what channeled information was, but it was sort of like an automatic writing is what Neil Donald Walsh did. And just the way, for me, how this series was set up, Dani, it was awesome. Book 1 being like personal truths, like all about you, all about how do certain futures and events happen to you, how your intention calls for certain things, all things regarding you. Book 2 is about like global truths, which I'm totally excited. I think that's where this ascension process is taking those who are going to be staying around for it. The idea of like more loving, global, heart-centered communion in this age of Aquarius upcoming, 1,000 years of peace, golden age, however you want to look at it, how highly evolved beings sort of live in highly evolved societies, you know, with less emphasis on money, if money at all, the idea of nothing hidden, you know, all corporate structures are laid out there. If there is commerce and money involved, everybody knows what everyone makes. There's fairness and equal trading. And it's just, it's a magnificent view of how highly evolved beings live on an advanced global society. And then, of course, this is probably my favorite. If I didn't say the other ones are my favorite. Book 3 is all about the cosmic truths, the galactic brothers and sisters that I'm such a fan of. You know, what your friends are all into. And what really got me, I mean, you know, I kind of always was down with the curiosity of UFOs. But honestly, this book explaining just the utter reality of why that makes sense that these societies are out there. It was my first big hit into things are not exactly what I thought.
Or what you were told. Or what I was told.
Yeah, exactly. I was thrilled to learn of a God like that. That's just this force of love and gives you free will, period. Like that's the end of story. Which to that video, which you had mentioned, that's what's represented by these major arcana cards. You don't have to know what the major arcana cards are if you guys don't know tarot, but tarot represents basically these 22 cards of the mind of God, in that you are an aspect of the mind of God traveling through eternity, traveling through this thing called time, that this aspect of God says, you need to learn some things that aren't exactly all you, so that you can get all of you into perspective. It's just beautiful. That's my first rant about the books that I first fell in love with. Oh my God, there's something more than what I was told, is the Conversations with God.
I love that. So guys, what I would do is I would get a pen and paper and make notes of the books that we share that appeal to you, because I don't want to keep answering comments like this and that and this and that. And I just thought that probably will happen. So just to preempt that. And then Jeff, what I'd like you to do is hold up the third book, and then so people can maybe take a picture on their camera as well to help. Yeah. So
it's the same as the first two, but it just says book 3 on it. This is the original. So now they just come in paperback, but just remember, Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And he has a lot of clips on YouTube, guys, and he's a really great guy to listen to. And he covers a lot of the topics that are in here. But if you just like to sip on some coffee and tea and just kind of get lost, I mean, this is the way to go, is get some paper in your hands. I mean, this made me fall in love with reading. Actually, this series of books made me fall in love with my private time reading. So I couldn't encourage, I mean, regardless of how far you are in your spiritual journey, as elementary as that is, it is just so nice to rebuild and take a look at that foundation. I think it's the foundation of everything, are those books. For me, that's how it acted for me. So.
Brilliant. All right, I'm going to share one of my all-time favorite books that I've read for many, many, many years. And it is Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahanza Yogananda. And I am absolutely, totally, and have been since the minute I saw his photograph. And I looked at his photograph. These 2 nuns had been in cloisters for years. A friend and I went to visit these nuns, and all the walls were adorned with Archangel Michael, Jesus, Gandhi, Buddha, whoever else you can think of, and ascended masters. And that I'd never seen him. And I looked at his picture, and I swear a literal light came out and just bam in my heart. I'm like, oh my God, who is that? And then when we were in Encinitas, where he had built one of his ashrams. It's in Encinitas, California. I don't know if you can see it, but anyway, he's got 2 places, one in LA, Lake Shrine, and one in Encinitas, California. This beautiful man grew up in India. His name was Mukunda. His father was a senior railway operations person. But in the time that Mukunda grew up, it was very common to run down the street and look at the local Swami. A Swami is a holy man. So he would go to the Swami who, for example, could make any scent or smell in the world come out of the middle of his palm. He could take a flower that was dead, put it in his hand, and bring light force back into it. He would also, Mukunda, carry on down the road to watch the levitating Swami. People would sit in silence, in devotion, and this being, the Swami man, would be sitting in deep meditation, levitating off the ground. There's another also that he talks about in the book, who was a Swami who was able to tame the Bengal tigers, put them into a hypnotic trance. Absolutely beautiful. And there's so much in this book, and it goes up through his journey of becoming a devotee. It talks about his lineage. Oh my God, I honestly could not recommend it higher. For reading a book of somebody who devoted his life to love, to learning. Not that I'm saying that the ashram life and the Hindu life is for everybody, it's not, but just as an insight into a great mind and a beautiful man who's loved all over the world. He also brought something to the West called Kriya Yoga, Kriya with a K. It is not your asana poses at all. It is a science that is in the back of the spine, like a kundalini. In the book, he writes about how secret it is, but in this day and age, there are people teaching Kriya Yoga. and that he's bringing energy up through the chakras or up through the spine into the third eye and down again, using, you know, an om or a special, beautiful, holy word that's given by the teacher that teaches you the Kriya Yoga. So not to do discredit to Kriya Yoga. It's a very sacred, loved, beloved science. This is a picture of him at 16 when he was really, he so wanted to get into this particular place to study, and he did everything. And he's a beautiful writer. And in Encinitas, if you go to Encinitas, to the it's called the Self-Fellowship Gardens. There's gardens you can walk around. You can actually go and see his room. His shoes are still there, his books, his glasses, his writing table. Yeah, it's just so amazing. I find Yogananda such an incredibly interesting person. You can get a CD, you can hear his lovely accent and his funny laugh. And, you know, I don't follow anyone, never gonna follow a single being. You know, like I said to someone yesterday, I say to you, Jeff, if God herself walks in right now, I'll say, hi, darling, put the kettle on, I'm having a chat with Jeff. You know, that's not arrogance at all. That is absolutely being in the moment, being loving and allowing yourself to be, as people say all the time, sovereign. We came here to be sovereign. So that, oh, the final thing about that book, Steve Jobs, when that man died, he made sure that every single person at his funeral had a copy of this book.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know
big
that.
deal, yeah. So there you are. That's my second book.
And so what was your take home from that book? I read it years ago. That Lake Shrine is one of the most beautiful places in Los Angeles. I was blown away by it. But what is it like? Was there an underlying theme for you in that book, or like what did you take home after you put it down to be like, that changed my life?
I was so into it. I went to the fellowship and I said, can I write the movie script? You know, with reverence and absolute respect for this man's work. And it still hasn't been done. It still hasn't been done. A film, a movie sounds a bit more tacky, a film of this man's beautiful work would be such a blessing to the masses. Now, there was another movie that came out, film, documentary, took these people years to make on him. And I think it's called Awake. And it's a lovely look into his life. I have such a heart connection with him. That was my takeaway. And the way he writes in his story, his spiritual journey of becoming, you know, and being told you are going to America and you are teaching Kriya Yoga. So we can really thank him for so much of the kind of yogic understanding, especially the science, the internal science and reverence. Yeah.
Brilliant. That was brilliant. That was brilliant. No, it's quite a sight to behold. Why I was struck so much about it is that it has reference and it honors all the religions right there. You know what I mean? It has signs and statues from all over. And so I was like, it was this place of unity as far as just going through. I just want to walk that beautiful lake or just sit and meditate. It was like you're surrounded by, like you said, the ascended masters. By it was so inclusive to just, this is how you live a loving life. That really struck me. I'm so glad you brought that out. I'm so glad you brought that out. I think everyone should read that 100%, 100%. 100%.
All right. Second book for you, Miller.
I'm up. This was, again, I'm sort of doing a chronology thing. This book was given to me. By just some dude on a bus ride up to shoot a commercial up in Pismo Beach. We started having a good conversation, and it's the classic, The Seat of the Soul, which really should be on everyone's shelf, I believe, as far as another one of these 101 explorations of there's a new world coming where consciousness is king. And that really opened up a whole doorway to me. I mean, I had to show this book because Gary Zukav, before he wrote this book called The Dancing Wuli Masters. This is the book that opened up my world. This is just, I mean, there's the cat right there. You've seen his face on all the talk shows and stuff. But what he wanted to do with this book, because he knew that this consciousness shift was coming, he wanted to explore this new science of the new physics, of quantum physics, quantum mechanics and stuff, and to link this concept of consciousness, of individuality, having an effect on our spatial reality. So this is a cat that knew no scientific background as far as I can remember it, because I haven't read this book in years, but it absolutely, in between the lines of this entire exploration of quantum physics, is the study of consciousness. And this got me down all the holographic universe rabbit holes, all the, the dude that wrote the holographic universe and all these expert, physics dudes that whenever they talk about their experiments and their thought experiments and their measurements and their quantitative analysis, all they're talking about is the idea that your mind has an effect on what it witnesses and observes. And I just, for me, that was fascinating. I couldn't read enough books about quantum physics. And this is like written for a beginner to understand. And there's tons of equations, which forget about it. You're not going to get it. It's not about learning this math or this stuff behind it, other than the idea to like find out like what does really living mean. So if that concept of the science of spirituality interests you, I would say that this book should be on your shelf. The Dancing Wu Li Masters. I saw this on the floor of my former brother-in-law's car, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" And I was like, "Oh my God, Gary Zukav! I kind of remember that. He wrote this before this. I think he wrote the physics book that inspired him. I think, if I got it right, if I got my chronology right." And Dani, I suck at getting my chronology right. Like, I'm terrible at this sort of thing. I think he wrote this and he realized what he was writing about. He was writing about spirituality in everyday life. That's why I think these kind of go together, but they don't, it's not necessary. But this opened up a door for me. The Dancing Wu Li Masters. I give that an A+. I give that an A.
Beautiful. So maybe somebody, if they were thinking, well, which one would benefit me more? If you're at the beginning of a spiritual quest, maybe the Dancing Wu Li Masters would be more appropriate. But if you're already somewhat down the road, maybe the Seat of the Soul would be, a better choice for someone. Who knows? It's all about, growing and developing. And thank you so much for those two. You keep freezing, you keep freezing, but yeah. Right. I'm so excited about this book. I've had it 25 odd years. It's called Faces in the Smoke. And it is about this guy called Dukan Gersi. He is a traveler. He travels around the world and he lives with indigenous tribes and he photographs and he documents his stories. If I have to, I just went down to Mexico, I'm like, what should I take with me? I grabbed this. And my family members are like, oh my God, have you not read that? I'm like, I've read it like 1,000 times. I'll pick it up and just drop in. If I want to learn all about the Benin, the slaves from Africa, the Benin, where voodoo actually originated from. They were kidnapped, stolen as slaves, taken to Haiti. And voodoo was born out of this. The Tuareg people, my God, these are the blue men at the desert. Nobody really knows how they got there. They're in the middle of the desert. They still live there to this day. They are the Tuareg people. You learn about their cultures, their customs. They're so romantic. They write poetry to their beloveds, and they have little windpipes, and they're so incredible. And then, like the Jamaicans call it coconut radio, the telepathic radio. But he goes into stories of him and his partner getting lost in the desert, them start thirsting to death, the tongue drying out, and all this terrifying details when a little boy pops up, and then the little boy's communicating the Tuareg telepathy, and then they're saved. And it is just like, again, you could go into the Aborigines, they all know where the water is, where the food is, they know how to follow the song lines. But this book, if you were interested, this is an eyewitness account of voodoo, shamanism, psychic healing, and other amazing powers. It is by Dukan Gersi. And when I got it, it was really hard to get. It was out of print. But this man, I hope somewhere has TV shows, and maybe there's something on YouTube, I don't know. But oh my goodness. And shamans and sorcerers of the Andes, we talk about zombies, the Tuareg people. Oh my gosh, what happens in the Philippines. It is so exciting. I could not recommend it highly enough. That was a real big, wonderful insight into learning about the other tribal aspects through the eyes of a European who was so devoted to honestly, truly bringing as much as he could into our awareness, so we can have more respect for the indigenous, which is definitely a travesty in the planet as far as I'm concerned, and actually filling us up with knowledge about them, So there you go. That was my other my other book.
I read a book years ago, whenever I was down in Australia, about this European group of like 3 or 4 people, and they somehow got permission or whatever to live Aboriginal with the tribes really, really remotely in that central part of Australia. And as they would walk, they were wondering how the Aboriginal tribes people would work out what each one would do at their next stop. And it turns out they couldn't figure it out. And so at the end, they found a way to ask, and they were thought communicating. They were using telepathy. And I wish that there'd be more access to that sort of tribal shamanism, kind of where we're headed as a collective anyway. But we already had all of that. We already had telepathy and thought transference. And these people were blown away because they thought that they were the advanced ones coming in to study these primitive people. And they were just blown away at how they knew how to not only communicate, but just work the different lands on their way to their destination, just almost intuitively, even though they've never been there before. It was, I would never remember the name of it, but that reminded me so much about that, but I wrote that down. There's just endless wisdom to be learned from like these tribal stuff from Aboriginal groups. And it's just, that's a really good recommendation. I'm probably due for another book like that.
Was it The Mutant Traveller from Down Under? Something like that, the title of that book. Mutant Traveller.
That might have been.
Yeah, I think
that might have been it. That might have been it. That was like 2001. I was there. 2001 when I was down there. The Traveller Down Under, what was it? I have to look it up. I'm just curious.
Like a really strange title, like Mutant Traveller from Down Under. I'm sure mutant is in the title.
I'm going to have to look at that. I'm going to have to see it just out of curiosity. Cool. Good share, Dani. Good share. Oh man, this is one of my all-time favorites. Quantum physics, spirituality, melding all the inferred stuff about spiritual tarot. It is all about the self-aware universe by Amit Goswami. This is the Indian dude that was in that movie called What the Bleep Do We Know?
Oh yeah, I love him.
I read this book long before that movie and a few other books that he wrote. And this guy encapsulated, and he actually said it. And I'm so glad. I actually think I'm going to make a video on this about getting our human junk away from this concept and idea of using the word God to identify consciousness. Because when you're walking amongst consciousness, there's very few words, universe, infinite source, and I've used them and still do. But the idea that this exceptionally well-researched physicist uses the word God as the source and being before matter, and all matter is made of consciousness, is made of the aspects of God or the electrons, was phenomenal. And there's too much I have written and underlined. That's a whole nother, that's like a weekend excerpt. But again, it says it right here in the title, how consciousness creates the material world. And that's not like metaphorical, that is actual, that is scientific. And this guy brings out that idea, actually kind of what I was talking about with my last tarot thing, that the idea that consciousness creates what we perceive in time, because time is not what we think. You know what I mean? It's so malleable. It's so independent of another person's experience of it. And so consciousness precedes everything physical. The major arcana precedes everything physical. It's eternal, it's knowledge. And so this may be, oh my God, this is in my top 3 books right here, The Self-Aware Universe. And you can skip over if he gets mathematical, which he does, but just scan over those damn, equations. Like, I don't know what the hell that crap means either, but it's the idea and the beauty that, the brain didn't create consciousness. Consciousness created the brain. That's a good summary. And I just love to hear analytical information supporting these spiritual truths, what the tarot teaches, what I like to talk about and teach whenever I talk. And I see a dude as well researched as this. I mean, get the hell out of here. I mean, I've read this 10 times at least. I've read this at least 10 times. It is such a good book. Such a good book. Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Marrying everything together, knowing that the creation is from the observer, but they go back and back and back and back to the original creative source. And that, yeah, that's wonderful. Oh, there's 1,000 ants on the floor. Don't look, don't look. There was a praying mantis that died. I saw it on the floor and I didn't pick it up, and I should have done, because now I can't do anything about it and the ants will keep on coming. That's Costa Rica life.
Costa Rica life.
Very
Costa
lovely.
Rica life.
I'm not complaining. All right, so my next book is in no particular order. Is a lot of people know this book. It is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And Paulo Coelho is a very, very spiritual man, very deeply, poetic and philosophical, and really observes life. And this is the story of a little shepherd boy who goes on a journey to find his gold. And his journey is so important. And on the journey, he takes his goats, looking after his goats. He meets a girl, he falls in love, he wants to be with her. But it really isn't a romantic story. It really is about the deep excavation that the spiritual self goes on, wrapped up in this wonderful, delicious, kind of, Arabic kind of backdrop. A lot of people talk about The Alchemist. I know it's been recommended. A lot of people say it's their favorite book. It's amazing how many people say this is my favorite book. It's not my favorite, it's one of my favorites. And but I really, again, for you to think, like, when you're like, what do I read next? What should I look at? What's going to kind of tip me into the next layer of my progression into my own spiritual search? This is definitely one of those books that would give you a little bit of a lift. And read it to your kids. It's a really good story to read to the children too. It really embeds and kind of embroiders more of the story from a young boy across the world. It conjures up all those beautiful images for children, and there's beautiful teachings in that story. So yeah, I've actually read that book to children. That's why
I think kids having access to this sort of information, this sort of idea of what, I don't know, God, to use that term, or why we're here. I can't even imagine having that early start about the unity of everything, rather than more, compartmentalized belief systems. The idea coming into the world. I just think, a kid having that sort of inspiration at a young age is brilliant. Is absolutely brilliant. Right. You brought up children and reading the children's book. That Neale Donald Walsch has a fantastic children's book, and you can listen to it read on a YouTube channel. It's called Giving Voice to the Wisdom of the Ages, I think. It's a fantastic YouTube channel anyway. I like to spread word on people that are just putting out inspirational stuff. But The Little Soul in the Sun is Neale Donald Walsch's, that's the Conversations with God guy. That's his story to children, to just teach them about coming into this world, and your friends are here to work with you and play with you, to teach you what it is to have fun and what it is to forgive, because they come down here and they treat you poorly, or they bully you, or they do mean stuff. And so to remember, that everyone in your life is there to help you, that you planned it as a little soul in the sun before you dropped into the world. And I love children's books surrounded in that. So I had to share that, because I think it's a beautiful story, and it's short and it's sweet, and it gets the point across, and it infers everything, because children are really good at getting the message and not just saying, this is how it is. This is why you always forgive and be compassionate. That's not how, kids don't, but to hear a story and learn the lessons, I love that for a child's book. So anyway,
yeah,
that's not
amazing. Just want to tell you a quick story while you're getting your next book. I saw something so funny on Facebook this week. There was a picture of a child's drawing of his family, and they all had something. They all looked like they were hanging from the neck, like really disturbing picture. And so the parents got called into the school, and then the teacher said, what do you think about this? And the mum and dad went, oh, that's great. That's us snorkeling on our holiday. So this pipe thing was there. But if you looked at it, you'd be like, oh, that child's really disturbed. He wants to hang his family. Yeah, you know, through the eyes of a child, right? Perception of the adults, they just don't get it. Apart from mostly, hopefully, the parents do. Anyway, thank you for listening. Yeah, so funny.
Love that. You know what? The next book we talked about briefly, and it sort of may have prompted this idea to have this show with you, but Power versus Force. I mean, come on now. It was brought to my attention, everybody. It was brought to my attention in the comments that this is the Hay House version of it. And I cannot confirm or deny this, but Hay House may or may not have changed some of the content. I don't know if that's true, because I do know that David R. Hawkins, all of his other books have this beautiful diagonal pattern to it, where it's a diagonal half of a color. Like he's a one called like Letting Go, it's half yellow. Another one, The Eye of the Eye, and it's a half color. So just know that if you Google or look up Power versus Force by David R. Hawking, and you have an option to get that diagonal color or this, I think this is fine, but just know that this is may be altered. I do not know for sure. But Dani, I mean, you can tell this is everything for consciousness. This is magnificent. I've read this more than a few times. And again, it's a calibration of consciousness. And I think you read this book and you leave feeling optimistic, and that if you can manage to keep yourself at a high vibe, you're actually not just canceling out some other person energetically, frequency wise. You're not just canceling out one other person who's vibrating low. One person who's vibrating or at a certain consciousness level cancels out like thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And again, I'd like to remind anyone watching the show that these are all repeatable scientific measurements based on kinesiological testing. And actually, this is that page here. You know, like if you get up above 200, you're like in the realm of like the living, okay? But if you're one individual at a level of 400, no, you don't have to know what this number means, but just know that as one's consciousness raises at a level of 400, you counterbalance 400,000 individuals who are below the level at 200. Because the conversation that I kind of get caught up in sometimes with my clients, but moreover, friends and associates of my friends, is that they feel powerless in this time when all this cuckoo, crazy banana stuff is happening in the world. A lot of this stuff that we don't even want to talk about, in a lot of cases can't talk about it on this forum, but people feel powerless. And what the science says, everybody, Dani, everybody, what the science says, you do more good by creating a bubble of happiness and joy in your life, that you is sending out those vibes to the end of this known universe. And that is counteracting all those negative mojos out there. And so I say, just go have a party for yourself, celebrate. Don't be afraid to eat that cheesecake, drink that bottle of wine, and just have fun with your life, because you are playing a positive part in this consciousness war that we're in, by you just counteracting all those plotters and all those negative people out there that are lost or misguided or whatever you want to look at them. So I love Power versus Force. And it also is a wonderful way to literally calibrate the truth of different versions of like books, the Bible. That's how I found my next selection, A Course in Miracles, which we'll talk about, because that's the king of them all, Course in Miracles for me. But that's how I found the Course in Miracles, because it's calibrated the Course in Miracles as being so high as a spiritual psychology book. I mean, if we had to fill 6 hours, I could go through my tabs and explain why this is so powerful to understanding how you're a spiritual being. You're just not someone going through spiritual rituals. I mean, you are affecting the world, right, Dani? Walking down the street, you affect the world, you know?
So it's 100%. And I love that book so much. I love his first little story when he was a little boy, and he's on his paper round in the snow, and it's so cold, and a blizzard comes, and he gets knocked off his bike, and the newspapers go everywhere, and it's dark, and he's freezing to death, and he knows to get into and dig a hole, and he's inside a hole and in the dark in the middle of flipping nowhere, and he's dying. and he's literally leaving his body, and he's floating into this blissful, beautiful stage or state. And the next thing he remembers seeing his father pop his head, like uncover the snow and find his boy, and his father's face. It just it touched my heart so much, just to enter a book like that, and then have his beautiful discussion of how you measure emotion, how we can measure emotion.
You can measure it.
Who would have even thought? Yeah.
It's too much. It's too much. And you can measure truth. And it can be blind tested. That's what I found most fascinating. You could have someone hold an envelope of something that they don't know what's in it, and you can muscle test them, and their body will know the level of truth in that document or in that statement or in that book that they're holding that they're not even aware of. That's the mind of God that I love teaching through the tarot. That's this swamp of consciousness that we're swimming in. And I just find that book is on the top of the heap. It's at the top of the heap for understanding yourself as a vibrational being, every chapter, forget about it. Every chapter is good.
And every child, like you said, when we thought we would finish recording, because I thought you were recording when we did our last broadcast and we carried on chit-chatting, you were saying, like, how is it not in the hands of every child in every school? And you're right. You're right.
No, I mean, your life would change if you knew. And I just opened up again a random page. And Dani, because I told you before we started recording, I mark up my books. Like, there's pencils and markers and circles and little stars everywhere. How would a child's life change if they knew that they could not have to be so wrapped up into how something's going to work out for them, but just maintain that state of what they're desiring? And I almost got this as a tattoo years ago. Actually, it's this. I'll just show. I had to write it down. This is my awesome glories. You remember this, right? You remember this from the book. This idea that we're trapped down here in time, right? This is sort of go back to this whole, lesson with everything we're talking about. Where A has to leave the B because we're in this perceived space and time. So time has to happen to get you where you want to be. But if you're living just up there where you can kind of be everything and know that every potential and possibility is real, that's when like your tarot sessions get really good, because when you can get them to understand that they can be experiencing that thing that they desire now, and the attractor pattern will find that future path. And it'll seem like, oh my God, someone called me to be on their show. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that then this happened. Oh my gosh, I met the coolest people. That's what I wanted to do, is meet cool people. And I can see in your comments, because I used you as an example, I think I'm meeting really cool people that watch your channel, and I really, that was my intention whenever I sort of put it out there a couple weeks ago. I said, I just want to have new access to cool friggin' people. And so that was my path to get to all of your people, to just see the comments and the wonderful questions that they have. And so, to just live up at that ABC and know that everything is possible. That's a really good tarot session too, is to know that you just bring in these futures, because you just trust. And I mean, for me, everything is tarot. So I tend to bring that in. So I apologize for people that aren't into it. You don't have to be into it. Hopefully you'll get into it. But yeah, David R. Hawking, probably anything he does. But I mean, I wish I had stock for how many times I told people to buy this book, and they did. I wish I had $1 for every time I sold one of his books. I must have sold about 100 of his books over the past 5 years alone, at least. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's doing such good service, again, to humanity who are on that quest for spiritual knowledge and understanding consciousness and balance and energy, without the structured educational patheticness around us. It's just going inside and accessing, and it's easy enough, as we said, for children to understand. So parents, have some good reading there for you. Thank you so much for that. Love that book. I think I want to talk next about my boyfriend. He's not really my boyfriend. Nicola Tesla. I know I've mentioned him 1,000 times. This book's wearing out now. In Costa Rica, everything, like everything melts or it gets moldy. It just is what it is. You just deal with it if you're in the jungle. But I just love and adore this man so much. And there's so many books on him. But really, I would recommend to anyone that wants to raw look inside of Mikola, buy what he has written or what hopefully he's written, because there's so many people that have written books, and I've read those and I've read his writings here, and I'm like, it's nothing like it. The man writes so beautifully. It's so eloquent and poetic and full of information. And I mean, a little bit is mind blowing. He goes into his inventions, and but the things he talks about, like he was quite a quirky guy. Like he talks, and this is what he did was he's such a good guy. He wanted to teach the young men, because of course there were no young women, but let's not even go there. The young men of the day, late 1800s. So he would write his thoughts and thesis and put it into a magazine called, I think it was called The Engineer, or the Electronic, anyway, The Engineer, I think it's called, but you can look this up. Anyway, so the young men would have all this access to his thinking, how he thinks about things, because we want to know that what is inside the mind of the genius. And he was gifting all of that. And there's so much in this little, I mean, it's so little. It was like, I don't know, $9 on Amazon. I mean, I'm sure you can get it other places, and if you can, I would. I don't support Amazon at all, even though my own book's on there, whatever. They make you go there, so you can't go anywhere else. But this is amazing, so many amazing things. He shares that he couldn't stand to see a woman, a pearl earring on a woman. It would unhinge him. It would really affect him dreadfully. He couldn't stand to touch certain women's hair. He just couldn't. He could hear a fly land on the table downstairs. He could hear an earthquake coming way before it came. The man was it was agony. He lived in physical pain so much of his life. He had so many terrible illnesses. He almost died. He was the same weight his whole life, pretty much, after a certain age. He's just incredible. He talks in detail about every single invention that came to him, every single thought, or how can I improve this on a steamship, or how can I help this telephone company in Hungary, in Budapest, and it's all in here. What he tells us is he would think it through in his mind until the item was solid. He would turn it every way in his mind. And at sometimes he would literally be looking at this model in his mind that he's looked at so much, he would see where screws were starting to wear out and little marks and scuffs. He created from the inside, the consciousness from the inside out. So by the time he got to actually manufacture, say, his turbines, it was perfect. There was no need for trial and rerun and second model, third model. It went out perfect. And so this book is called My Inventions, the Autobiography of Nicola Tesla. And I love it. It's another one. It's so worn out. I'm just like, I'll just pick it up. And I'm just so obsessed with him. He's what got me into the space industry. Yeah, I love him. I love him. He talks about his background. His mom was a genius. She was a genius. Of course, his mother was a genius. His father was a genius too. You know, and there's also stories, people think that, you know, he was very connected to Venus, that he may have been a child who was adopted. He doesn't say that in his own words. However, the life started out tragic as his brother, who was equally, according to Tesla, way more intelligent than Tesla was. And that little boy died on a horse. And that was a very sad trajectory. And so this beautiful, sweet boy kept himself back a little bit because it was such a horrific thing, would say, I wish they'd taken me. I wish that maybe I should have been the one. Well, we're so, we love you. And we're so glad that you didn't go anywhere and that you gave us and gifted us Wi-Fi, submarine technology, drone technology, free energy, harnessing the planet on the energy on the planet, and so much more. I've gone on about him in so many broadcasts. I don't want to turn people off, but if you are interested, please, that's the book I'd get, definitely. That is the book I'd get.
And he was a spiritual cat. He wasn't just all about engineering and numbers and gears and machines and physics. From what I know about him, which is not a lot, only little excerpts and little blurbs that I hear from other people talking about, and they sort of put on little quotes that I don't even know is really from the real person. But he just wanted to just go out there and create good machines for mankind, to help mankind. That's what I got. That's why I'm drawn to the dude. I think that's awesome. And it completely adds I think credence to the idea, because he perceived the world differently based on his level of consciousness. You know what I mean? He was a highly conscious person.
Yes.
And a real genius will perceive the world differently because he's so highly conscious, high vibe. Obviously, if he just wants to help the world. Okay, that's good. My Inventions. Okay, I'm sure there's a bunch of books, but My Inventions. Okay. And that's all in his own words. He wrote that book.
He wrote it. He wrote, there were papers that were then collated into an actual book, but he wrote that.
Okay. All right. Excellent. That reminds me of my next choice where I have to go. And this is what Nikola Tesla, I believe, was doing whenever he imagined that turbine in his mind so well that just it had to come into fruition. And it's called reality trance surfing. It's a trip. I didn't read all of it because it's like 37,000 pages long, but you get the gist of it. It's the idea. It's reality creating. It's called trance surfing because if you imagine that, it's basically what kind of we've been talking about, this consciousness thing. And of course, the tarot communication comes in too. If you imagine the reality that you desire so well that even the bolts and the nuts and the washers are wearing off because you're spinning it around so much, that reality is brought to you, and I will bring back my awesome graphic again. It will bring you the next idea or the next book or the next inspiration so that you actually have that turbine. I think that's what Nikola Tesla and all great inventors and thinkers and philosophers really do, is that they put themselves in a reality and then the world kind of goes on. And then that, reality leads to the next sort of tunnel. It's like tunneling. I think they calls it like reality tunneling, but it's such a good book. It's not a book that you just want to buy to try out. So I'll happily give another recommendation to a YouTube channel that he covers a lot of these chapters. His name is Brian Scott. So Brian Scott's a great YouTube channel, and you can look, he has a playlist of all of Vadim Zalin's, if you can read that, but reality trance surfing. And he talks about pendulums, the idea that anything can become what he calls a pendulum, where you just kind of got to get that idea moving. I want to do something with my life, or I want to create a corporation. And you just got to get that pendulum going and keep, putting your focus and energy into it. But there's a point where the pendulum takes over, like big corporations, and then the people don't matter anymore. And so to walk that line to get that pendulum just controllable, that it's just under its own control and not wiping out everything else in your life, it's a really interesting conversation. Oh, and a really great story about this, Dani. Are you ready for it? You ready for it?
Yeah.
It's a good story. It's coming. Ready? Okay. I was listening to that Brian Scott, who introduced me to this idea of reality trance surfing. And I was like, okay, I've listened to like 4 or 5 of these things now. I got to buy this. I have to buy this book. So I looked it up, and this book is like $150 or $175 or something like that. Because I told you, it's 97,000 pages thick. And I was like, man, I don't, you know what? I'm going to get my hands on it. I just not right now. Because I didn't want to, this is just in like April of 2020. This just happened. This just happened last year. I go on a walk. This is a true story. This is a true story. Cross my heart, hope to die. You know what I mean? I'm on a walk in Ojai, California. And those little libraries that people make, basically big birdhouses, and you can just put in a book, take a book, put in a book, take a book. Would you not believe, you better believe, because it's a true story, that this was sitting right on top and it had never been opened. And I was like, holy monkey, thank you to whoever placed that there for me. And so that's a true story. That's a true story.
People right now, they're going to be thinking, or probably earlier than this point of the broadcast, but the law of attraction, Abraham Hicks, and all of this, what the bleep do we know, and being the emotion of the thing that you want. But everyone's got stories like that, and that's such a good story. It's like, we know it just happens. It just happens. I was cycling, my bike broke, the chain came off, I couldn't do it, and within 1 minute, a man standing there, could have been a woman with the same talent, but a man is standing there who just happens to be that particular mountain bike genius. Boom, done in 1 second. I mean, we've all got stories where something like that, finding the book that you want, I love that. I love stories like that for all of us. Good to remember, gives you a lift, raises up the consciousness, raises up the vibration, right?
Love it.
Right?
1000%. 1000%. What do you got? What do you got, Dani?
Too many. Basically, too many. Because I get so excited. I just want to share everything. But I'm going to go with this one next. The medical medium.
Ooh.
Now, the whole world is obviously under a Darth Vader dark hand. Don't do this. Don't take this. Don't listen to this. Do this. Shut up. We can do whatever we like. And, I don't like the rules currently. They don't agree. This book, this man, I will tell you, he calls himself a medical medium. And he does say things like, no one else in the world is doing this but me. Now, just get past that, because he's allowed to have an ego, all right? He's allowed. When I was reading it, I was like, oh, God, But, I was thinking about, Jesus, the Christ, what we know about him, the things that we think we know. He must have had a really powerful, passion to do the things that he did, to kick all the tables over for the tag, whatever, if that's a true story. But so you've got to have an ego or a personality, some passion behind you. So guys, don't let it put you off, because, oh my God, all the illnesses in here, all of the things that we can suffer. There is a tincture, there is a herb, there is a combination of herbs. He just goes into Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, adrenal fatigue, diabetes type 2, migraine, shingles, premenstrual syndrome and menopause, and Lyme disease. That's a huge one, a huge one. I want to say something on Lyme disease. I would love to get this other beautiful man on. His name's Jeff Foster. I have reached out to him. He's English. He is a speaker of love and spirituality and consciousness and so much more. He got Lyme disease, but it was the neurological. It interfered with his brain. You should have read the stuff he shared. It was unbearable reading. God knows how that man survived, but he came through it. He had some special treatment in Germany. And I thought people need to know that Lyme disease, if that's your diagnosis, there is different types, and one of them is neurological, because they couldn't figure out what it was. Right. And so when I remember reading it, thinking, God, I'm always going to remember to tell people, if I ever think of Lyme disease, I'm going to say that, it could be the neurological one, and be aware of it. But what he does, he shares stories of people that come to him, and then he breaks down the prescription that he gives them. Silver hydrosol, zinc, vitamin B, and this is for chronic fatigue syndromes. The whole book is listed with things that people suffer when their immune system goes down and they need a good, a jump up, a jump start. I could say another word, of course, but, let's not go there. But anyway, so this, I honestly recommend, those of you who are into your own holistic healing, listening to your body, knowing that the planet we live on, she gave us everything we were ever going to need. And so this man channels very much like Edgar Casey, who I'll talk about in a second, but the medical medium, Anthony William, he also has a book on foods to eat, to nurture the body. So she sings, or he sings, foods that will just raise the frequency, raise the vibration. This kind of knowledge is so pivotal, especially right now. So I really do recommend this book, The Medical Medium, Anthony Williams. Little bit on Edgar Casey. It's really important, I feel, Jeff, to if we say such an amazing name like Edgar Casey, then we should give at least a minute or two to it. So Edgar Casey was a beautiful American, I think he was Canadian originally, a beautiful man who developed an ability within himself to have somebody sick come to him. They'd lay down, he would put them into trance. He himself would go into trance, and he would consciously travel into their biome, into their body. And he had a secretary with him. He would speak and she would prescribe. And there are countless cases of people surviving and living beyond what their doctors said, or, because doctors are not gods. Brilliant, amazing, fantastic. A lot of them, not all of them, we know that. But, that is not God. There's always something else sometimes you can marry. And so when I was reading this medical medium book, it really put me in mind of the books I've read on Edgar Casey and the things I've watched on him. And there's Edgar Casey, and regular spelling of Edgar, but Casey is Cayce, like Sacy or Sace, or, you know, but Casey with a K. No, with a C. Oh my God, I keep doing that. C. All right, so that's my share right now. What
Edgar Casey was on an honorable mention list where I don't have the books, but I had to mention him. As a kid, my parents took me, I think just because it was a stop in Virginia Beach, Virginia, at the Edgar Casey. Right? And I was maybe 9, 10, 11, maybe years old. And I remember being fascinated with this concept of this ESP, which is, he was also known for that, as well as all of his healings and stuff. And I remember just being in wonderland. And then I totally dropped any idea of him for decades and decades and decades until, the mind-body connection thing became really real for me whenever I got to LA and became a body worker, a massage therapist. I was a massage therapist for decades as well, that I loved. But the mind-body connection, I'm so glad you said that, Dani, because I brought a book I wasn't sure I was going to share, but I think that's an excellent segue, because it's about your body being a communication device. You know what I mean? Your body communicates what's going on with so much more. And of course, all the natural remedies, if it grows from the earth, it's a medicine, but this is called Messages from the Body. It's not even a book. It's like a binder. Have you seen this before? You have?
Yes.
This is a crazy experience, because I'd have clients for years. Some of my clients I had for an entire 20 years that I was in California. So I saw their kids grow up, go off to college, graduate college, get married, get divorced, get married again. And every single time that they would say, you got to come over to the house. There's something going on with my left thumb, or there's something going on with the left side of my body. I would pull this out. It's always their psychological, what's going on in your head that manifests in your body, that you supplement with all these natural herbs and all these things, beautiful things from the earth. But if you can get them to reframe their thinking around whatever subject it is, they will feel a sense of ease that is immediately noticeable. I have another great story. Are you ready for it, Dani?
Absolutely.
This is such a good story. You're not even going to believe it. It's a terrible subject, but it's a really good story. So I was in a relationship, and I got accused of cheating on this person by her. It was a terrible experience, because if you knew me, you'd know that could never even be an option. And so I went to bed that night after this really uncomfortable conversation of being accused of cheating. And the way the conversation went, I was just like, well, shit, I can kind of see why she thinks that way now that I did that, but I didn't. So I wake up the next morning, true story, true story, swear to the major arcana, true story. So I wake up and I slept with my contact lens in again. I slept with my contact lens because I felt like a bubbling, like a contact lens. If you have them, you sleep and they turn or they get in the back of your eye. It's really.
Oh, what? No. Oh, no. I can't unhear that. I can't unhear it. The contact lens will go. Oh, God. That's awful. That's awful.
Sometimes the lens will come down and come up. Never to the back of your eye, but sometimes.
Okay. Oh, I feel faint.
It's just uncomfortable.
I feel faint.
It's a freaking uncomfortable feeling. So I woke up and I'm laying there and I'm like, okay, I left my contact in, son of a bitch. I go into the bathroom and I look in the mirror, obviously, to see what the hell's going on. And have you seen people with the white, the corneas of their eyes all red, like completely bloodshot red? That had never happened to me. That had never happened to me in my life, where I would have that red look that you sometimes see. So I was like, what in the hell is this all about? So I picked this up. I'm like, what in the world is going on? I mean, it startles you, when you see that, it startles you. And it said something to the effect of taking on the guilt of something that you did not do.
Oh.
And I was like, if that's not, there's no chance of that happening by chance, that is my body communicating to me where my mind went. I felt guilty for doing absolutely nothing wrong, which was crazy. And your body will let you know. So if you're curious about what it means when your left knuckle hurts, or that a particular tooth hurts, or your left toe hurts, or your thing, it is so specific. It goes through every single bone, every single muscle in your hand and body. It's a fascinating book, but that experience and 20 years with my clients, there's something about that being true. Your body communicates everything that you think. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's always talking to you. Can you hold the book up because it's a very special book. It's not like probably going to be on the shelves everywhere. The name of the doctor that wrote it, Michael.
It's called Messages from the Body. And then, I don't know if you can read that. There's psychological meaning. The Body's Desk Reference. Oh, here's the dude up here. There it is right there. It's Michael J.
Lincoln, PhD.
That's it. PhD.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing. That links directly into, talking about how your body communicates all the time and how we can use all the herbs from the earth, licorice root, put all these things together that are in this book here. Reflexology. And every single nerve ending in your body ends in the feet. That's why the Egyptians created the art form of reflexology. They knew this. So you'll see maps of the feet. For example, they will say things like, if you have a headache, the nerve ending is your big toe on the left foot. It might not be, so don't quote me, go look it up. And then by rubbing that, that's going to take care of the pain, because pain signals in the body, but it may not necessarily be, an ache down here. It really is something up here, or vice versa sometimes. And so I would recommend pregnant mums that were not sleeping, anyone that came into my clinic, I would recommend, especially towards the end of pregnancy, reflexology. The solar plexus is on the foot here, and having that release and massaging the feet like the reflexologists do, knowing what they're doing, helps the blood flow better, helps everything flow in the body, not just for pregnant women. Because I know a couple that actually went into labor on time, but it really helped that process. And the feet can be terribly swollen during pregnancy or illness too. But the art form of reflexology is something beautiful, practical, ancient. It's not westernized or made up. It actually is a beautiful tool for understanding how to keep a healthy body. Just by rubbing your feet, just by massaging your own feet, you're going to release energy, and anything stuck and toxins in the body. It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so you shared your, see, this kind of conversation to me, just going through, mapping through, and the things that naturally come to mind that people are asking about, like those that don't know this kind of information, how wonderful to think about reflexology, or does my body communicate to me, or go look up some stuff that Edgar Casey wrote, or go get Anthony Williams' book, and figure out what herbs are going to help your chronic fatigue, your fibromyalgia, which is a terribly painful situation, your Lyme's disease. So I'm gonna, there's too many. There's too many. Okay, I'm gonna go with this one. I'm gonna go with Manly P. Hall. Okay. Manly P. Hall.
That's no joke.
Right, and neither is the book. It is absolutely full. I mean, full. You need a microscope to read. But this man has studied every single symbol, religion, cult, animal, salamander, pixie, gnome, snakes, iconic iconography, sarcophagus, beetle, Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, absolutely incredible. And he was 26 years old, Manly P. Hall. Another Canadian, damn those Canadians, man. The Canadians and the French right now, they're like really present in my world, and everybody else is too. Like the life and philosophy of Pythagoras, the man who gave us the equation of pi, the tetrahedron pi. And just, it is a book that you would never read it in a week. You might, some brilliant sparks out there might, but are you really absorbing all the information or just trying to get through the book in a week, the legend, the Egyptian Madonna, look at her. So Manly P. Hall, when he put this book together, people were so impressed, and it's called The Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Wow.
The Secret Teachings of All Ages.
That's it. I am ordering that today. I will promise you that.
Yeah. It's magnificent. Philosophy, classic science, religion, esoteric, mythology. It is so Kabbalistic keys. So again, crossing different religions, different thought forms, and, you know, crossing all the boundaries. So what happened with Manly P. Hall was he spent weeks, and I think it was my friend, Dr. Chris Lamont, told me that he actually got a lot of his information from a particular library in New York, and I forget which one, but it's not really that important. What is important, what's so cool that I thought was, I was studying him and studying Masonics, Freemasonry, you know, the magic square, the symbolism in Washington, D.C. and Rome and London. Those three cities in particular are geographically, geometrically mapped out pretty much identically. There is a blueprint, and there will also be a monument, an obelisk, an Egyptian obelisk, as part of this ancient mapping, you know, of cities. And so this is how I found him. And anyway, long story short, in the Masons, there are what's known as 33 degrees or 33 levels. Now, the 33 is apparently the highest. There are actually more, but we're told, you know, the people on the ground, like, don't tell them too much. We're told that there are 33. And it could take an absolute lifetime for someone to get to the 33rd degree, and they're rare. 33 degree Masons are, well, they're selected, and they're actually rare, apparently. And this man, when he presented this tome, this body of work to the world, he was actually initiated into the Masonics at the 33rd degree. That's how impressed they were.
Well, that's a testament to that book. That's a testament to that book.
Because they're like reading it going, oh yeah, oh, he knows his stuff. Yeah. Secrets of the world, secrets of the cults, the cultures, the religions, the thinking, the sciences, you know, the salamander, the animals that can become male or female, and all the different experiments that have been done. I mean, there's so much here. Mm-hmm. So that's a really, really important. And just as an aside, you can get smaller book. This is another one of his, Unseen Forces, little paperback, little nothing, like $5, $5. You know, because it's too much to like chunk that big book down. But yeah, the illustrations are beautiful. And guess what else you can do? Oh my God, you can also go on YouTube and you can listen to some of his lectures. He has lectures on YouTube.
Yep. In his original voice, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's him. It's him.
Yeah. And also on that Giving Voice to the Wisdom of the Ages channel, that guy that narrates all that stuff, his name is Barry. He's got a great speaking voice. He has a huge selection and playlist of Manly P. Hall, and I'm through with that. But now I got to get that paper in my hands, especially after seeing it, and especially after knowing that about about being initiated on the into the 33 level. That. That's a whole conversation about the Masons, but the idea that they're just like, we'd rather have this guy on our side than against us. That is 100% a testament. Brilliant. Good share. I am most excited about that, to be honest with you. I'm most excited about that. All right. Do we have time for more?
Yes.
Okay. I want to go. I really only have 2 more selections left. And then I just have some honorable mentions that I'll just spit out the end, because I lost the books, but I think everyone should at least be aware of these books. And it kind of gets away from the spiritual stuff a little bit. So, that might be of interest too. The Mac Daddy, Top of the Throne, on Top of the Castle for me, is A Course in Miracles. And most people are familiar with this because they have it on their shelf and they never touched it. I had this on my shelf for close to 10 years, for about 9 years before I delved into it. And I just knew that I was ready. I just knew that I was ready, because before I got into it, the first time that I tried it, the first 2 or 3 times that I tried it, and I got to the lessons in the back, there's 365 lessons to retrain your mind to think about the world, your existence, and most importantly, I think your ego in the proper perspective of eternity. It's a masterclass, but I wasn't there the first couple of times that I tried it. So most people have had this on their shelf, in their desks, in their attics for years. But if you want to revisit it, and you can get past the semantics of hearing what most of us have associated in our lives as religious talk, like the idea of Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. It's really just talking about this idea of consciousness being God, that all of us is the sonship, and that the Holy Spirit is the communicator of the two, And so most people are turned off by that. This really talks a lot, in my mind, it talks a lot about tarot. I have a Course in Miracles, an ACIM playlist on my YouTube channel if you're curious about tarot and how it's really talking about the Course in Miracles and the atonement and all of that stuff. This is a magnificent book for spiritual psychology and learning how to consciously get out of your own way. And who turned me on to this was our friend David Hawking right here, because he says, these are spiritual books, blah, blah, blah. This is like highly, highly rated just for the level of absolute truth. And I was like, and then I found out it was spiritual psychology, and I was like, I'm all in. Well, until 10 years later when I was actually ready for it. The first time I tried it, I was still chasing my ideas. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be recognized. And it's just like, no, the only thing that matters is spirit. The only thing that matters is God. First time I read it, it's like, well, that and me having a really wealthy life. You know what I mean? And so I wasn't ready. But later on in my life, I just absorbed this. This is a slow burn, Dani. Have you ever attempted or looked at this before?
Oh yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
It's a slow burn. And like how I mentioned earlier, how I mark up the books. You may not see it, but I hold it. Every single sentence in here is like, I hope I never forget that. I hope I never forget that. Every little paragraph, there's little stars and flowers. It'll be like, this, get your attention, get back on this. And there's this great meme, Dani, that was floating around that, like Facebook, when I was on Facebook in the ACIM, whatever group, where it's just like a big bucket of that highlighter liquid, that highlighter ink, that yellow highlighter ink. And it's just taking the book and just dipping the whole thing in, because it is that good. And it goes into a lot about how your body communicates with you. How, if you want to look at it like this, how God, how spirit communicates with you through how your body is reacting to you. And certainly that's been certainly my case for, my whole life. So it was nice to get that aspect of it. That's a slow burn. That's a couple paragraphs at a time, then let it set in. You can't be in a hurry with that. That's put on your big boy pants for that spiritual awakening stuff, and be ready to face your own shit, to be honest with yourself. If you have a hesitation because of any sort of previous dogmatic, restrictive limitations of words, like, Jesus, the ascended master, or God, or the Holy Spirit. Some people don't like that because they find that that's restrictive. If you can work through that and just get the message in the meat, that pays dividends, Dani. A year of doing those lessons transformed my life. I had no tolerance for any, not BS, like I kicked that out of my life, but just I knew that I was worthy of only good, because I lost that hypnotized state of just, that's okay, you can still make do. That's okay that everyone, you know what I mean? Oh, you can be treated like that because maybe they're having a, blah, blah, blah. And this was just how to hold love and tell the world, I love all of you, but that doesn't mean that you know what I mean? It's just, that's probably number one for feeling self-empowered in your spiritual life, because you love everybody and you don't want to change anybody, because you love them exactly who they are, and you feel invulnerable. I mean, put you in a position with gladiators, and that you can't be harmed. You feel invulnerable. So That is my number one. That by far, by a million miles. And it ties together beautifully with tarot. Absolutely beautifully. Yeah.
That's amazing. So my friend Cindy, she is very prolific in the Course of Miracles, and she'll get on phone calls. She does group phone calls on this material, and she's just so well versed in it. Hi, Cindy. Hi, Cecily. They're beautiful women. They're lovely. Pickleball mad, but let's not go down the pickleball road because we'll get distracted, or I will. And yeah, I want to say as well, like the Course in Miracles and Conversations with God, it's such a massive body of work that can be broken down on audibles. It can be broken down by finding YouTube, videos, people talking about it. There's different things to watch. And I just want to say to anyone out there, if books aren't your thing, that's all right. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Please do not feel that, I call it academic snobbery. Oh, what an academic snob. Have you read this book? Have you read that book? We're not doing that at all, honestly, nope. Truly.
I hope it doesn't come up.
No, just had so many people coming and saying, Dani, what can I do? What course do I take? What book do I read on different subjects? I'm like, well, if we come together knowing this beautiful man, Jeff here, the Tattooed Spirit, has a vast library of books, and we've covered a lot of the same subjects. We've studied a lot of the same subjects of interest in life. And so it made sense for us to come together in this broadcast to discuss the different books. But again, don't be intimidated. Don't think it's not for you, because it is. Stories are for everyone. And yeah, figure out different ways that it will suit you, how to learn. Okay, is it my turn?
It is your turn. I babbled a bit about that, of course, yes.
No, you didn't. You're perfect. Okay. So, Cleopatra. Cleopatra. Ooh. For me, the Egyptian mythology, again, the truths and the untruth, Cleopatra, people tend to think about her as being the only pharaoh called Cleopatra. No, there were other Cleopatras. It's something very important, because obviously in the West, we're like given this story, we're spoon-fed it with treacle and honey and sugar, but really there were many Cleopatras. But this book is about the final Cleopatra, and her reign ended 300 years of Greek rule in Egypt. So imagine, like, America's taken over by the French, and the Americans have to suffer 300 years of French rule, and they have to learn French, and they have to follow what the French guidance is on religions and sciences and astrology. It was just such a big thing. Now, Cleopatra's last name was Ptolemy, and Ptolemy spelt with a P-T. Ptolemy, it's Greek, because when Alexander the Great invaded, some people didn't think he was that great because he invaded, but Egypt took it over, created, Alexander the Great from Macedonia comes into Egypt, created the town known as Alexandria, and the great Alexandrian library, one of the great mysteries of the world that was sadly burnt down at some point in the past history. But this story shares the 300 years of Greek rule, ending with this woman leader. And anything for me to do with Egypt is just so fascinating. It's a very well-written book by a lady called Joyce Tildesley, and she's an Egyptian scholar. It's a good read because this lady has done her homework. She's lived there, she's studied, she's, done everything she can to try and bring truth to it. But so Cleopatra. And then I would read things about Cleopatra as a kid, but like, oh, she's so beautiful. She's the most beautiful girl in the world. But nothing about her brilliance, nothing about her genius, nothing about her diplomacy, running Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, having these two iconic lovers at the same time, which I haven't read anything that disputes that. But again, sometimes we come to find out something's been completely fabricated, manufactured. But one other cool thing, so many cool things about Egypt for me, is in the Valley of the Kings, there's also a Valley of the Queens. Now, how often do we hear about the Valley of the Queens? And until I'd actually gone to Egypt, I took a cruise. Well, it was a bit of a ferry with a few cushions and a few flowers. It wasn't really a cruise, but it was lovely. It was lovely.
Did you have to row it yourself?
Well, it's pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
It was a bit of a shock. It was a bit of a shock because I'm like, oh, I'm going on a cruise. I went with my sister and we went down the River Seine because we were going to go to all the temples at Luxor. And one of the things that really jarred my nervous system was the call to Allah, you know, the beautiful call to Allah that the you know, Islamic people, you know, respond to that. They pray facing a certain way to Mecca. And because we're on the River Nile, these big, huge, giant, loud alarms are going off. These big broadcasts are going off, the call to Allah, both sides of the river. It's like so jarring. So it's very much becomes part of your, you get used to it. You get used to it, you know, like the children in the American schools where I lived for a long time, they get used to the programming of standing every day and pledging allegiance to the, as a foreigner that's observed these customs in Egypt and America, and don't get offended, anyone. This is the problem with the world. We all get offended. We all get out of our pram. Yeah, but that's not the same. Well, from my observation, I couldn't see the difference in a custom that is a certain time every day, and it's a similar program internally, you know, that we do with all these different customs around the world. I'm not quite sure how I got off track there into that particular subject. Please feel free to take me back. I was going down the River Seine, the River Nile. Did I actually say the Seine? Where am I? Paris? No. Egypt. See, it was a long night.
No, I get it. No, no. You were on your cruise. You were on your very luxurious cruise, and you were talking about hearing the call to Mecca, hearing the call.
Yeah, I just wonder what got me there, because we were discussing Cleopatra, but oh, I know. Going there, physically going there and learning, there's a Valley of the Queens. Oh my God, right? And so I'm in the Valley of the Kings, and we were right beside, me and my sister, Tutankhamun's tomb site, and they were still excavating it. This is like 2003, 4, 5, 6 or 7. It was amazing. And then going down into the tombs that were open and seeing the stars they always paint. I've seen those in Glastonbury Cathedral too, the different ceiling skates. I mean, that again is a whole other subject, which, you know, I don't think we should go into right now because it will be another 2 hours. But if you want to hear about all that, just ask us. We'll definitely tell you. Also, I realized and heard the story that there is a female pharaoh. Her name is Hatshepsut. And Hatshepsut is the only queen who is buried in the Valley of the Kings. She would wear the beard, the Egyptian beard, you know, the beautiful jewel. She would walk around bare-breasted. She wasn't going to let being a woman stop her being a respected pharaoh. I like that chick. I like that girl. Yeah. So, and she's also given the knowledge or the accolade to being the first Egyptian pharaoh to actually bring about the obelisk, the Egyptian obelisk, the tall column with pictographs and hieroglyphs with a point at the top that we see in Washington, Rome, and London. Anyway.
Yep. Yeah.
Right, darling, give me your last one.
My last one is the collection of the raw material, the Law of One. You know, it's these 5 books. A lot of them are online, lawofone.info. You can read them right off the website. Again, I like the paper in my hand. This is about the progression through the densities of evolution. And we are at the harvest time, which is why it's so chaotic now, because Earth herself is graduating and mankind is graduating. Some of us will, some of us won't, but it's all described there in the most loving, cosmically appropriate and accurate, as far as it touches so much upon like Edgar Casey's work and so many of these other people that also mention it from the periphery. So the Law of One, harvest, and like the Dolores Cannon New Earth stuff, it's all talking about now. And I'm so excited that's so much part of the conversation online, is what does this mean going from the 3rd to the 4th to the 5th, dimension. Then people are talking densities, and it gets very confusing, but it's all about the evolution of the species and the evolution of Mother Earth, and what a ride that it's going to be on, So like I said in our last broadcast, hang on through as what Ra calls these inconveniences, because the rewards are brilliant and time tested. And this goes into our galactic conversations with the brothers and sisters out there. They've seen it thousands of times, not exactly in this way, but this is just par for the course for everyone to evolve. So the raw material for that is fantastic material. That's all the physical books I have, Dani. That's it. You wiped me out.
Good, good. So can we talk a little bit more? Because the law of one is being spoken about all across, channels. And for me, guys, one thing about me, the labels don't interest me. There's people call this the truther movement. Why? Like, it's everybody, it's everyone, it's everything. And so lots of people are mentioning and suggesting the law of one. And please, could you just share a little bit more about it? Like, if you said there's 5 books, so if somebody wants to get into it and they could only pick one book, should they start at number 1, or would number 3 be
at number 1? Yeah, start at number 1. Start at number 1.
Why would they buy it? What's in it for them?
They would buy it to possibly answer a lot of questions they had. They talk a lot about Egypt, a lot about the pyramids, a lot about how they were built. They talk a lot about the progression of consciousness from just electrons into into the elements of fire, air, earth, and water. How that is the first density, is what they call it. That's the first density, is just consciousness exploring. I talked about that in that last tarot video, as a matter of fact. It's just consciousness exploring, like here, I'll bring them out. It's air exploring what it's like to interact with water, and how water interacts with air, with the wind and the waves. And then the fire element comes in. The salamanders come in and they want to play with the air. And what does that mean for the fire to play with the water? That has an interesting and obvious relationship. And then you go on to earth. You bring in the earth herself. How does earth play with water? How does earth play with fire? How does earth play with, how everyone plays together? That's consciousness beginning its journey back to the atonement, back to the joining of this thing that we call God or the creator, starts with little electrons. And that's the first density. There's sub-densities and they're all split up, guys. But the second density is that once these little creatures of consciousness explore all of this, then they begin to explore like plant life. You know what I mean? Just actually going through physical processes of photosynthesis and exploring what consciousness is as a plant. And then later on in the density, the second density, then those plants that move, they can eat their own food, or they wind and try to find the next thing to hold on to. It's adding movement to that exploration of consciousness. Then the later stages of second density is like animals. Firstly, herd animals that don't really have individual consciousness or identity. They're just a herd mentality, like a school of fish or a big swarm of birds. And then later in the second density, you get into like individualized animals, like our pets, or that chicken that loves people, or all these videos, Dani, that I love watching when these random opossums come around and they just want to be special amongst all the other opossums. And so that's why we love our animals so much, is because they're just about ready to pop into the third density of a human experience, or if you're in other star systems, whatever kind of experience that is. Oh, I was so afraid of that. That's the phone. It's going to ring for 35 minutes, but I think you can still hear me. Yeah. And so in this human experience, that's third density. And then we are transitioning into this fourth or fifth, which is now multidimensional. It's a little bit less physical. We start to add more of an energetic body to our chemical body. So we get more light. We, that's the whole thing. Our DNA is changing. There's so much evidence now. Our friend Alex Collier talks about how our DNA is holding more light. The strands are expanding. A lot of people are having amazing experiences where their DNA, that's the next evolution into the fourth density. Then it gets to the fifth, and then you add more and more qualities of this divine entity or God as we progress through this. And it just spells out the progression of consciousness and where we are now as far as basically the choice. And this is Edgar Casey, Dani. This is Edgar Casey talking about how the earth progresses. Earth is like the third rock from the sun. That's like the third chakra. So Edgar Casey's cosmology is fascinating as far as where we are right now, because like I said, if the earth is at the third chakra, it's moving into the fourth chakra. It's moving into its fourth density. And so that's the density, obviously, of love, that green ray. And so that's the big question of how it's going to happen. Everyone wants answers. I think it's going to be different for everybody. And that's a whole nother talk, for heaven's sakes. But that's the progression towards this atonement that the Course in Miracles talks to. And so if you're curious about the progression of consciousness, the law of one is really good. And it calls this time the harvest. It calls this time the harvest, because if the percentage of your frequency is at a certain percentage of service to others, then you will progress with the earth as it progresses through this process. And if you're just naturally exploring what it's like to be more service to self, then it is inferred in that book, you will experience another third density to give you another cycle of time, 75,000 years, or however you want to look at those time cycles, which is very difficult to do in this short amount of time. And, it's interesting, the Ascended Master material, which I brought up, but I wasn't going to talk about it, but this would be the appropriate time. The Ascended Master material.
Can't see it. Hang on, bring it back, please.
It's a little bit, it's called.
That's it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Electrons and the Elemental Kingdom. Beautiful book. Who wrote it?
This is channeled material, but it's put together by a guy named Schrodner. I'll hold it up there, and you can go to Schroeder, yeah, the Ascended Master Teaching Foundation, or the ASTM.com. And then you can find all these books that all the Ascended Masters have compiled, and they've all been channeled by one person, which is really important because there's a whole bunch of stuff about that. But it ties in all of this stuff. And so there's a lot of good information in that law of one, as far as all of these inconveniences of people getting sorted out. What side are you on? You know what I mean? Did you take the red pill? Did you take the blue pill? You know what I mean? That's why this talk is going on. Why don't they understand what's going on? And then the other group is like, why don't they understand what's going on? Is because we have two dimensions going on right now. We're just sharing the same physical space. That's why it's so confusing, why the other side just doesn't get it, because they're saying the same thing to us,
And that's a really good point. Yeah, it's a really good point. It's like, we want someone to think a certain thing that we believe. They want the very same thing. And it's a complete waste of time. At this stage, it is a waste of time, because they are as convinced as you are about, so for me, it's like pulling back, no sides. I'm on no side. I'm just doing Dani. I'm on no side, no label, no group, no nothing. Just that's it.
It's called the choice. I mean, Edgar Casey called it the choice. All of Dolores Cannon material, it's called the choice. We get our free will to use. How do we want to spend the rest of our time in eternity, for this next period of time coming up? And I think right now it's very clear where people have made their choice, and both sides are loved equally by, the one infinite creator, as Ra calls God, the one infinite creator. And it's just, how do you want to explore creation? Is service to others or service to self? Do you want to be, domineering, or do you want to be loving? And it's a beautiful process. And I encourage everybody who watches my spiritual tarot, like lessons and stuff, is to really pull yourself back from the events of the world, because what the events of the world are in the scheme of things are actually very, very temporal. They're in time, and they're ultimately, I would say, almost to the point of meaningless as far as eternity is concerned. I mean, it really is, just love and you're good shape. And people do that naturally. You don't even have to read a damn one of these books, I don't think. Just love people, love yourself, love the people that want to enslave you. Do the best you can. Do the best you can. And that'll get your frequency up. Just ask David Hawking. He'll tell you.
Brilliant. I wanted to point out to the lovely viewers that will see this broadcast that bell ringing earlier that you heard, that was actually the Pleiadian ship that dropped this lovely man off today, because he is a hell Pleiadian, and that was his crew saying, "Come on, Jeff, quit your yakking."
I'm holding them up. I'm holding them up.
So in closing, I am going to share a final book. It's a book I actually wrote, and it is called Kids of Divorce, and it is by Dani Henderson, NLP practitioner, clinical hypnotherapist. Now, I always say to people, don't look at the numbers after my name. It just makes me look clever. It really doesn't mean very much. But this book, under the Kids Soul Speak banner, Kids of Divorce, it's 11 stories from children aged 19 down to the age of 10. And they are sharing with us, like Riccardo, age 13 in Italy, kids from all over the world, sharing their stories and their heartbreak, how they feel about their parents' divorce. Emily, age 15 from Germany. Whoops, I don't know how to. So many. And so I wrote this. I wanted to bring the children's voices so that the parents that have gone through a divorce recognize, how can I help my kid? Because your children will never, ever tell you 100% how they feel. And if you are against their father, they are going to support that, because what are they going to do if they're full-time with you in the house? It is such a destructive journey. And these are the children telling you. And they all said, Dani, if only I had a book like this before my parents got divorced. And to the parents, there's a chapter in here called Do the Right Thing. Like, for example, and it's not a big book, it's 11 little stories that are just life-saving, mind-changing. Grandparents, cousins, friends, people, anyone divorced with children, excuse me. Excuse me, one little girl, when she goes to see her father, all he wants to do is make her surf because he's a good surfer. She's like, Daddy, I want to show you that I'm a really good artist. Please, can we go to the art store? But the dad just couldn't. He had such little time with her, and I understand his psychology, and I feel sorry for the guy. But he wasn't listening to his kid. So it is about really listening. Those children who, if they give themselves the willingness to fall in love and get married, should not have to worry about where their mum or their dad are going to sit. If their dad's going to bring his new wife, who's 60 years younger than the mother. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not fair on the children. Oh, come on, we know it happens. It happens all the time. And so this book will really help you to understand how to release anger, how to put your children first, the little ones and the big ones. And one of my clients, she got it and she called me sobbing. I'm like, my God, what? She said, Dani, I never healed from my parents' divorce. Here I am, a 48-year-old woman. I'm reading the stories and I'm bawling. It was such a release for her to read the stories, to connect to her feelings that was so buried. Divorce is such a horrific, horrendous journey for so many people, not everyone, for so many people. And the other thing I want to say about that is, there are mums and dads out there who really, after this last 2 years in particular, think they cannot stand, think they hate their spouse, think they hate their wife, their husband. They're so miserable. It's a symptom of the fear and the anguish that we've all been psychologically traumatized. We are in a psychological warfare. And I just want to remind you all that at one point you loved that person. At one point you loved your husband and you loved your wife, and you didn't fall in love without them having good qualities. I mean, I'm not talking about the odd arranged marriage. I mean, in general. So maybe have a little think about that. Maybe it's not right for you to break up. Maybe you just take a breath, just take a step back and start listening more to your husband, to your wife, to your children. All this tension, it just jams up the body. There's no freedom, no flowing, but when we listen, because I do know people, and I have counseled in my practice, coached people who have come back together by just taking a breath and stopping and pulling back from, he did this and she did that and all that nonsense. Your children deserve better. They deserve loving, strong examples of what a man is in the world and what a woman is in the world. And there's a lot you can do. And this book that I wrote with the children's stories telling you is a really helpful tool to add into your library. Kids of Divorce, under the Kids Soul Speak banner, by Dani Henderson. That's me. Okay. So thank you.
That was really nice.
Thank you.
That was really nice. That was really, really nice.
Great. Thank you so much, my love. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Tattooed Spirit. I love the branding, the brand, the look of the whole website, the energy, the effort, the training, the dedication, 20 years of devotion and commitment to tarot. And of course, there's way more to you than just tarot. Not that we want to shrink down the tarot. You are a very spiritual man. You're a leader. You're a teacher. You're really growing, you know, in yourself and in the online community that is expanding ever more. Could you tell us how we can access teachings and trainings from you?
Well, on my YouTube channel, if you're curious to learn how tarot can not only be good for telling out where you're headed, but find out the real value of it as far as being a personal and a spiritual development tool, there's a playlist on my YouTube channel. It's called Master the Tarot. And it's the red slash with half my face. You'll recognize it. And just start from the beginning. And there's no hurry. You don't have to have cards in front of you. But if you kind of like the idea that we're not talking about demons and devils and what's going to happen to you, and this is out to get you, and this isn't going to work out. But there's deep spiritual knowings and connections to all of these cards that speak with that deeper part of your mind or your higher self, your subconscious, however you want to go about that, that is there to assist you. It's there to guide you. It's there to support you. It's there to love you. Because if you're looking for a source of inspiration and all those other things that are so important, especially now, because it's cuckoo crazy bananas out there, the tarot is so accessible to tap into that part of yourself under the conscious level, under your conscious level that really wants to speak up and just say, you're going to be okay. This is where you're headed. You have the power to do this. This is a loving suggestion. All of these things that you want your best friend to be honest with you about. Trust yourself for a different change. Trust yourself. And the cards is how you access that. The meanings are on that playlist. I just go through the meanings and you can really get good insights from the meanings. But if you're curious about what you sort of poked around with the free playlist, there's a Master the Tarot masterclass that I created. And there's links all over this, you know, in the description boxes, or you can go to tattooedspirit.com and play the little video that I put on there. And there's lists of everything you're going to get with the course. You're going to get my favorite book. It's 102 pages of all of the written explanations of the cards, not spun positively. It's not a Pollyanna's look at tarot, but it's the spiritual truth that you're on the right path, even if you're going to make a mistake. It is for a reason. I think that's the most empowering thing about tarot. It's just always has your best and highest good at play. It just is. So check out that master class. My partner and I made it very, very, very affordable. You can buy the whole thing. You can buy a part of it. You can get it done whenever you want to get it done. You don't have to hold on to the material. Check out the options. Those options will be changing in the future. So I don't want to give a certain thing right now because they're all sort of changing with how things change. So I welcome you to Tattooed Spirit and to reach out. And there's a lot of therapeutic tools in that masterclass too. There's a great how to do a discovery journey, Dani, with any one of these cards and develop a relationship with any one of these cards so you can find out why you're having trouble getting over a death, why you can't study for a particular test, why is it you can't get your applications out for a job, and then work with that part of yourself that's just dying for you to tap into it. Most of you, 88% of you, just wants you to talk to it rather than talking to your girlfriends or your boyfriends or, you know, yourself, your ego, where you're going around just messing around all the time with your pros and cons lists. So get to the source, get to your higher self. Tarot is a great way to do it. I'm happy to help you through this course because that's why I created it. I want to help people feel empowered. So there you go. Thanks for the plug, Dani. Thank you. That was nice. Of course,
it's important. What we're doing today, what I'm doing on my channel is bringing people with expertise in certain areas to give as much information, as much sharing as possible. You know, like I said, I'm getting emails, people are calling and booking me for private one-to-one sessions, which is amazing, but not everybody can afford me. You know, they can't afford a session right now. So that's why we're doing this, just trying to give everything we possibly can. So of course I'm going to plug it. Are you doing one-to-one readings at the moment?
I do one-to-one readings. Yes. Some people can't afford it. It's the same thing as you. I'd rather give people the tools so they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
But I think at this stage, it's important that we can tell people that you are available. They can book you for a one-to-one private reading, tarot reading now.
Yes, and bring in the therapeutic tools like neurolinguistic programming or a beautiful hypnotic guided imagery to get to the root of the problem. There's a lot of tools that you use in the session that I use in the session. I'd love to, find out more about that. All of that stuff, it's just mind-boggling. But the avenues that the tarot opens to get to the real root of it is really great. So we can cover a lot in a 50-minute. We can certainly get to the point in a 25-minute. And if you have the time, an 80-minute will be able to take care of quite a bit for you. So check out, again, the website, tatoodspirit.com, if you're curious. But just learn tarot yourself, empower yourself. But I'll help you during the way if you need a session. For sure, call me, for sure.
Perfect. All right, Jeff Burr, the Tattooed Spirit, my darling. Is there anything final I just had
a good time. I had some honorable mentions, but I just think anything more would be too much because it was really nice to cover a little bit more about whatever we held up, and you gave me some great ideas. So I'm really excited to try to find them locally first, because I want to try to find these books locally first. So I want to thank you for your suggestions. And one thing I have to share with everyone. It was so much fun for me to go through my evolving history in my love of esoteric stuff by pulling out my old books. So I want to encourage everyone out there to do that with your friends that are sort of down this same path and just talk about your journey through your books. It was so much fun finding out your journey. You didn't do it in chronological order. It's just a great way to know your friends, is to find out where did they get the pieces of information that created who they are now. I feel like I know you so much better because I know what inspired you now. So it's a great relationship thing. Just have fun with it. I just think it was a wonderful experience. It was great.
Yeah, no, wonderful. And guys, you know that this will be going out in a couple of hours, and there'll be a live chat available, so you can jump in and get involved. Give us your suggestions. Obviously listen to the things that Jeff is sharing, but give your suggestions, write it in the comment section. And remember that we're all here. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all here to love, to gift, to serve, to share, as we build that beautiful higher consciousness, that higher frequency, that power versus force, the David Hawkins material really, really brings to us in a very succinct way. And my final words, love you. I know we're all going through so much. I know that you're enjoying my new guest, Jeff Burr, Tattooed Spirit. I know I certainly am. If there's anybody else out there you'd like to recommend coming onto the channel here, please do so. We just bring as much as we can to serve, to love, to support. So I send you all my love, and I'll see you soon.